Alicia Atout, and on today's show, I'm joined by someone who I first interviewed 7 years ago. We were both music industry babies in a way back then, and now so much has changed. So everybody, please welcome Banners to the show.
Yay.
Hello.
Hi. I was thinking the other day, well, when I saw that I was going to be talking to you, I think that you were the first person that interviewed me. I think when
At
I,
that Sony music gathering, right? It would have
yeah,
been at that.
was it
Wow.
like was it like a listening thing or
It
something
was
like
like
that?
a little listening party that they were throwing. And I remember them coming to
Yeah.
me. We have this artist who has an incredible single. You have to come down. I was all about listening to new tunes. And then we came
Yeah.
down, had such a good interview. And I've been following what you've been up to ever since.
Yeah,
Oh, 7 years.
I knew you were the first person that I spoke to, which is awesome. It's so nice. Maybe this should be the last interview I ever do, and then it's just kind of bookended.
We can maybe splice a few more in between, throughout the
Sure.
career, and then we can end on it being the last one. I mean, just speaking to how much time has passed, because in reality, that's a lot of time. What do you kind of think is the biggest change since I first saw and met you? Whether something about your music, soul, life, like anything that comes to
Uh,
mind.
you know what? I think it is so overwhelming. I mean, you've done so much new stuff in that time too, and although you always seem far more together than I am, but like it's so overwhelming. It happened so quickly. Literally like 6 months before I met you, I think I was just in my bedroom writing some songs on my own, genuinely, and then so quickly everything happens really, really quickly, and then you get signed to this big record label. So I think at that point you're just hanging in there. I think every day you're just trying to make it last another day. But now, when things get on and you get a bit more experience with things and you can settle down with it, you can figure out who you want to be to people and what you want to say and how you want to say it. But I think 7 years ago, when you first start out, you're just trying to hang in there and not say something stupid, you
Right.
know, and
Yeah.
hopefully, and because I think having a career in music is a miracle. The chances of it working out are so small. Um, so at first, like I say, you're just hoping for the miracle to happen, and to still be doing it 7 years later is there is some sort of miracle has happened to me. Even if this is as far as it gets, it's been an amazing thing.
It's kind of crazy too when you think about it, because you're so right on that stance where you're just hoping you don't say something stupid. All eyes are on
Yeah,
you in that sense. And I remember in that interview, because that was, I mean, I was only 2 years into interviewing, maybe not,
yeah,
you're at that point. And I'm even thinking with all these music execs watching us, I remember exactly where we were. And I'm like, don't
yeah,
fuck this up. Don't. And
yeah.
we both did very well. So kudos to us. But
Totally.
like, there's a
I
lot
think
of pressure.
I was very impressed with the microphones that you had and the little
The
logo.
flags.
It was just like, oh my God, this girl is a professional.
Why, thank you, thank you. As were you, though. But it's really crazy to see how much has changed, even musically, because when it does come to things on the music side, your newest EP, I Wish I Was Flawless, I am not as officially been
Yeah,
shared. So releasing this, I know, was quite a process for you because it was forged
yeah,
during the pandemic, and some songs apparently took 3 years to be heard by the world. So was that just torturous for you? That must have
yeah.
sucked.
It really was, especially because like some songs don't come out because they're just not good enough. Most of the songs that you write don't come out because they're not good enough. But that one I liked so much that I just wanted to save it for the right moment. And somehow the right moment never occurred in those 3 years. So it's kind of been like building up to now with that song. It's called In Your Universe, that song, and I really loved it from the moment that we wrote it on Zoom. It was like the first Zoom writing session that I did in the pandemic, I think. Or at least it was the first one that worked, the first one that made a song, as
Did you
opposed
have a lot of
to.
trial and error? Because that's such a weird and different way to have to write music. Like music's very much about feeling what's on the floor and the energy in the room, and then you're doing
Yeah,
it just like this. Like it's a big
totally.
180.
I mean, like I assume it was the same for you, was it? Because your thing, you have a number of different awesome things going on, but they almost all involve being with people, don't they? And
Yeah.
and and the collaboration. So, and you'd built a thing to such a level that there must have been a moment for you which was like, the pandemic happened and suddenly you're like, have I still, this thing that I've worked really hard at, is it just not going to exist anymore? You know?
Right. Doesn't it feel like it's almost being taken away from you in a sense? Because at that time too, both of us were in Canada. You couldn't leave the country for how long,
Yeah,
like at least 8 to 12 months. So for a lot
totally.
of time, I felt this pressure of like, am I ever gonna get back out there? Is it gonna be virtual
Yeah,
for forever? We didn't know.
yeah. Well,
So yeah, I went
I
through
didn't
that
even
too.
know, I didn't even know that virtual was an option. And then all of a sudden, Zoom was a thing, wasn't it?
And
And
it's
then,
everywhere.
yeah, totally. And so to have that writing session, which worked, which actually made a good song as opposed to anything, was like such a big relief, really, because it was like, okay, it's not going to be ideal, but everything doesn't need to stop. It doesn't need to be the end. We can all make it work, really. So that song is special to me for a number of reasons, really, because it was just hope that maybe there would still be a
Right.
career.
It's like, will someone hear this one day?
Yeah,
Wow.
totally. And then as the pandemic sort of went on, you just realized, actually we are very connected. And in fact, it suddenly became even more connected, didn't it? Because everyone in the world was just sat at home. So everyone in the world was pretty desperate for Instagram lives or just little videos that you were putting up. So
Mhm.
suddenly it was this more connected thing, which came out of the potential of being completely on your own. So
Oh yeah, it went from isolation to actually connecting with people in a way we'd
yeah,
never had before. And like you said, we're still doing it right now, which is the most
yeah.
baffling part.
Well, it's actually the really good side of it, isn't it? There's no good sides to pandemics. I wish they'd no more of them would happen, but at
Of
least
course.
I honestly never done like I'd never really used Skype before. I'd never and Zooms and all that stuff. So if this is one of the parts that we can keep, which is I get to talk to you, you're on the other side of the world, but I still get to
Crazy.
talk to you, then that's a positive thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. But that was one of the things that where my eyes were really open to rather is I remember thinking, oh, I just can interview people when they're coming through Toronto. Like that'll be the main thing. And then once the
Yeah,
pandemic happened, you realize I can interview someone in the UK whenever
yeah,
I want to. Like it was such a
totally.
silly, obvious thought that had never clicked until this
Yeah,
happened. So you're right. There
yeah,
were a lot of very random silver linings that we're still keeping to this day,
yeah.
which is
And
crazy.
it's the same with songwriting. Obviously, you wouldn't really choose to do it over Zoom if you didn't have to. But still, I still do. It means that you can write a song with somebody in LA and I can be here in Liverpool. Some positives. It's still much better being in the room though, isn't it? People.
Always so much better. You can just read people's energy so much better when they're right
Yeah.
beside you. But we're
And that
we're making do.
totally, and that whole thing, like you'd start a Zoom and then you'd be like, you're on mute, you're still on mute, you know,
We've
mate,
all been there, or
you're
your
on
camera's
mute.
not working for like the
You
first
need
time in
to,
years.
yeah, and someone's there just kind of like,
Yeah,
like,
those have been very sad moments, but we've all had
yeah,
to go through them.
totally, yeah,
But in between there, of course, you were talking about singles and releases and the time that went into them. And it's always been so obvious to me just how much music is a true passion for you because the way you talk about it and just the way you were like longing to release your work, the excitement shines
sure.
every single time. So do you genuinely feel like that luster is something that you'll just never lose? Like you'll be
Oh
who
yeah,
knows how long from now, just like still pumping tunes out. Because I feel like when you're a
oh,
real artist, it's like it's something you can't get rid of.
oh, I don't think you could ever stop. I think you would just go crazy if you stopped. Yeah, I can't imagine. And I think that the thing of loving it, um, like I say, as the mega powerful businesswoman that you are now, it must be the same with you in that like so much of this is
She's trying.
yeah, I mean, like I say, I was saying to you earlier, like whenever I see what you're up to on Twitter, it's like, God, does she ever sleep, this girl? But I think it is very hard as well, isn't it? And it's very easy to second guess yourself. And genuinely, so much of your time is spent. Like I feel like I'm just a mover of equipment around America, and then at the end of the day, maybe I'll do a gig. But really, it's carrying things around, isn't it? And it's being really tired a lot of the time. And I think if you got into it because I don't know, you wanted to be famous or you wanted some sort of trappings of it, you just wouldn't see through the really hard bits. But if you're really passionate about the entire point of it, which is making music and making people happy, then I think that'll see you through. Ultimately, you need to want to do it, even if there was no money involved, don't you?
Oh yeah, there have been moments where some stuff just doesn't come through. I remember years and years
Yeah,
ago thinking, do I continue doing this? Because you just sometimes you get so many no's or doors closed in front of you, and you're like, man, I'm
yeah,
defeated. Like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden things start happening. You're like, I'm so grateful that I didn't step
yeah.
away and that you stick through those really shitty times because we've all had them. And when you
Of
do stick
course.
through them though, and you see the as cheesy as it is, like light on the in the end of the tunnel, it's so worth
Yeah,
it. It's so worth
yeah,
it
yeah. And it would be easy from the outside looking in to think, oh, well, that's really glamorous or something like that. And maybe there are little moments of glamour, but they're a very
for
small
sure.
percentage of the time. And most of the time is having slept for 3 hours, isn't it? And getting up and doing it again
Yeah.
or whatever.
Well, since we're kind of discussing the struggle of it all, it does kind of coincide a lot with the title of the recent release as it deals with imperfections. We all have those insecurities, those imperfections we deal with, and so many people have issues struggling to accept them. I know, even personally for me, I have for years because in this business and being in the spotlight to whichever degree you might be in, it opens you up to scrutiny and those pressures, and it can suck, but it does get better as we grow. So just tell me a little bit more about that growth and simply learning to kind of embrace those flaws and then of course putting that into this release.
Yeah, well, I mean, both of our industries, it's they really are full of really beautiful people, aren't they? Or at least people that on or the versions that we see are very beautiful and like
Yeah.
basically perfect, kind of flawless looking. I suppose that's Instagram does that, doesn't it? Or any of these apps, the social media apps, is we're basically presenting this perfect version, and it might be that like someone had to take 2 hours worth of photos to get that one that looked good and then do all the smoothing and the stuff. So we're seeing everyone else's perfect and we're only seeing our imperfect, aren't we? This like, and I think it's quite it it can really make you feel very like, I don't know, like an imposter basically, because you think, well, I'm not that.
Yeah.
Made my brain go a bit crazy, and I got really obsessed with not being, with not being perfect, basically, like everybody else was, and feeling like I was going to get found out, and spending a lot of time in front of the mirror, just despairing over like my appearance.
Dude, I
There's
was
also,
there too. It sucks. Like,
yeah,
why do we torture ourselves this way?
totally, and I think it's
Yeah.
it's even more difficult for women because women have to perfect themselves even more with makeup and all that stuff and presenting this completely flawless beauty, which ultimately is not really attainable. It also doesn't matter, but it's
Exactly.
hard it's hard to see that in the moment, isn't it? When you can't just get a hug off your mom or your dad or something like that.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the point of the. I mean, I know the title of the EP is a bit silly, but like it was the main driving factor of it, really.
That's a beautiful thing. So a lot of people really do suffer with that. And I know for me too, especially growing up, I was one of them. And then you're thrown onto YouTube or the stage or wherever you might be, and eyes are on
Mhm.
you, and you're like, shit, like, am I good
Yeah,
enough? Do I look good enough? This and that. People are
yeah,
saying I don't, people are saying I do. And it just comes down to realizing it doesn't matter. Like, so as soon as you
yeah,
said that, that's what clicked for me too. About 2 years ago,
yeah,
it all changed. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. So
yeah.
let that sink in a little bit, folks, because it's super important.
Yeah, I mean, this is me saying this as a man, and the pressures on me are far less than they are on women. Like I say, there's so many of these cosmetic products, so many magazines that are aimed at this kind of flawlessness
Yeah.
that means that young girls grow up feeling inadequate, which is just really stupid, isn't it?
Very. No, that's why I personally been trying to just, even when it comes to posting random things online or for just chilling out, like I don't get made up for camera anymore in a sense of, oh, we're just hanging out. Like you should know that I'm
Right,
at home with no makeup in my pajamas. So there's a time and
right,
place for it for sure. But I
sure,
feel like showing that real side more. I notice like your stuff isn't edited and I love that. It's like this is who we are, take it or
yeah.
leave it. And that's the point where I'm at mindset wise. And I've been so much
Oh,
happier for it.
that's great because, like I say, I think the pressures on you are far greater than on me.
It's so hard to compare. I feel like we've both gone
Yeah.
through a hell of a lot of stuff within our time. So
Yeah,
um
sure.
But of course, we're talking about something a little bit more serious. So I want to talk about something that I know brings you happiness. It's the multiple cameos in your fancy gold jacket. So you are you're a little bit obsessed with it, aren't you? And I understand why. It's a
I
fabulous
mean,
jacket.
yeah, it was just that like I just sometimes feel like I'm just a bit of a disappointment from a sort of bling perspective,
Okay.
and I just needed a way to make. There's a video that I was making, and I just needed a way to make it look a bit more shiny. Like the idea is it go from black and white and then into the kind of color, and I just wanted a way to make it like look a bit more shiny. So I just found a jacket on the internet, which clothes on the internet is always a dangerous concept, really, isn't it? But
Yeah.
then it turned up, and now I just can't imagine my life without the
It
bling
just
gold
it
jacket.
just fit like a glove. You need to get
It's
in
so
different
good.
colors. It's your
Yeah,
statement piece.
yeah, and also like I sort of thought that it would just be terrible quality because it's a gold jacket, but it turned up and it just looked awesome.
I love that for
So
you.
yeah, it's funny really though because I'm from Liverpool. That's where I am at the moment, and Liverpool is like it's just a very working class town, you know, and you it, Liverpool is good because it really checks you, and if you ever get too big for your boots, there will always be someone to be like, all right, calm down,
Settle
mate.
down, bud.
So there's a bit of me that just wants to keep my head down and there's another bit of me that wants to walk around with a big golden jacket on. So I'm just trying to find the balance.
You need the yin yang, like maybe like a
Yeah,
cool pair of blue jeans, gold jacket,
totally.
fancy shoes.
Yeah.
You'll find it.
I think the thing to do might be to just, play festivals in the US in it or something like that. And then I
Yeah.
come back to Liverpool and I'll just wear like I don't know, a boiler suit or something, or a football kit. I don't know.
Well, I look forward to many more cameos with the sparkly
Yeah.
jackets, I must say.
Oh, I'm glad you like it. I'll get it back out.
Looking forward to it. But I'd definitely be guilty here if I didn't admit that I went back and rewatched that first interview. And
Same.
in it, we started going down this fabulous Beatles rabbit hole. So I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the Get
Oh,
Back documentary because I know you
oh,
checked it out. So how
oh
magical was
my
that
gosh.
entire thing?
First of all, look right now. This is not even this. I've been just been reading Paul McCartney's like
I
lyrics
love
book,
that.
literally just before. Yeah. So Get Back. It's a dangerous thing for me because I think it's the greatest thing of all time. I can't believe it, and I will talk about it forever if someone starts me on it. And it's sort of true in like every musician that I know just can't get enough of it, especially like songwriters and stuff. Because the way you get to see Paul McCartney coming up with "Let It Be" and stuff,
Yeah.
don't you? And there's this. I just have this like unwritten rule now in writing sessions: just don't bring it up because if you bring it up, you won't get a song done. Like you'll just be talking
You just
about it.
talk about the doc the whole time.
Yeah, you'd just be talking about it for like 4 hours, and then it'd be like, right, I have to go home now. But there's that bit in it where like where like the there's like a microphone in the plant pot, so
Yes.
you get to hear John Lennon and Paul McCartney talking to each other when they don't think anyone can hear them. The
Mm-hmm.
entire time, I was just pausing it and just with my friend, just being like, can you believe this is a thing that we can see? Oh, I
Yeah.
can't. Honestly, I should stop talking about it because I will never shut
No, I truly
up.
I've always had this dream of being like a fly on the wall during those
Yeah,
recordings. And
yeah.
for me, being able to actually see it so stripped back and to see the arguments and like my favorites, George, I love all of them.
Oh,
Like, how
yeah.
can you not when you're a Beatles fan?
Yeah,
But for me, like just the spirituality and the worldliness of his music, I just was obsessed with. And
yeah,
so seeing the way that the conflicts forged certain songs or the way that the harmonies were just so effortless in every scene, like it's just
yeah.
it was a beautiful piece of work. And I know people are like, oh, it's
Totally.
8 hours. How can I watch? Just watch it. Just shut up and
Yeah.
watch it. Still watch it
And
over
also,
and
like,
over.
it should have been 20 hours. Make it 60. I don't care. I'll
We'll
watch all
watch
of
it
it.
all.
Yeah, I really found that like by the time because I really rationed it to myself. I didn't want to do it all in one go. I wanted it to be like an hour at a time or whatever. I really felt like when it finished, I really missed them. I really missed hanging out with the
I
lads.
felt the same way, which is
Yeah,
that's so genuine to hear from you, because I felt like there was something missing, because for those 8 hours you were just completely immersed in their world, and then
yeah,
you walk away and you're like, where are they? They were my buddies
yeah.
for a few days. But I just spun the record so much after that. Like, it's not that I've ever gone through a phase. Like, the Beatles have been with me the entire time I've been alive. But man, I
Yeah,
like started playing them all day long. It was obsessive.
totally.
So
It's
yeah,
so awesome as well how like the recordings that ended up on the album, they
we're
just
from that
fucking there
rooftop.
and then just because music's so different now, isn't it? In that like you can make it piecemeal and you can edit it so much and everything, but those are just basically live performances. It's so crazy how good they
Yeah.
are. I mean, the world doesn't need to know. Obviously, the Beatles are the greatest.
Breaking
But
news,
still,
everybody.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mike and
yeah.
Alicia too. The Beatles are
You
back.
guys should, you guys should listen. We got this band from Liverpool, actually. Maybe you've heard of them in
It's
Canada. I
very
don't really.
small, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But they're coming and they're awesome.
Oh my gosh. Well, the last thing I wanted to ask you about today, and of course we've talked about everything here, but it's a bit more of a serious question. Which era of the Beatles would you say you love the most? Because for me, circa like 66, 67, with all the psychedelia, the experimentation,
Sure.
Revolver with my favorite record, like that for
Yeah.
me is when they glow. But for you, what would you say is your favorite Beatles era?
Honestly, I mean, it's such a cop out. It's just all of it. I can't believe because to have that thing of like, because I know how hard it is to figure out an identity with music. It's so hard to have a voice, you know, a reason that people are gonna listen to you. There's so many talented people, so figuring out this is why you should listen to me. This is what we sound like. Is so hard. So to then go, right, we've nailed that, and now we're gonna change it and change it and change it, and every single time it'd be this amazing thing.
It's flawless
And
every
and
single
those
era.
like those early songs, God, they are such little kids when they wrote those unbelievable bangers. You know, like
Mhm.
She Loves You or Love Me Do and all that stuff being early on, but then
Right.
to do even that bit where Paul McCartney's writing Let It Be on the piano, it's just mad. But to answer your question a bit better, the first Beatles album that I really got into that I couldn't turn off was Sergeant Pepper's. Just like
One
what,
of my
what?
favorites. It's
But
so
yeah,
all over the place, and it messes with your mind so much as a child, because they're just
yeah,
singing about the most offbeat random things mixed against, like mixing 12 different backing tracks, the harmony, like
yeah,
there's so much, so overwhelming, but it flows flawlessly, so I get it.
totally. And then that weird sound in like the benefit of Mr. Kite and stuff that reversed like
Right, or they did like never to see any other, da, da, da. It's
yeah,
so weird, it's trippy, it's
what? Yeah,
yeah.
I love them so much.
Yeah,
Obviously.
that's the problem though. I was going into
Yeah,
this interview and I'm like, do I bring up the Beatles or not? Because I know how much we share the love of
because
them.
we're
At the
just
same time, this could be a 4 hour
do you
interview.
know what we should do? What we should do another time? We'll just do a chat for about 3 hours where we just work through the Beatles.
I'm down. We will
How
do like a
about that?
Beatles
Okay,
listening party. It'll be
let's do that. Okay,
fantastic.
let's do that.
I'm down. We're wrapping up the third interview and we're already making plans for the fourth. I love it. But Mike, I just want to say thank you so much for hanging out. So hyped on the
Oh,
new
you kidding?
release, everything that's happened in between. It's been an absolute pleasure. So thank
Oh
you.
man, it's so nice to talk to you, and I'm so happy with all the great stuff that you're doing, and I'm
Thank
glad that
you.
you're happy about it. So let's not leave it another 7 years till the next one.
Let's, okay? To everyone watching, this has been Banners. Be sure to check out his brand new release, and of course, hit up aliciatoot.com, not only for our previous interviews, but plenty more to come. Bye, everybody.